Hi, I'm Peter van Stralen from the Epic Family Road Trip. We're here at Overland Expo East 2019 in beautiful Virginia. I'd like to introduce you to my family. This is my wife Carol, Dan, there's Pete Jr., and my daughter Caroline. We're going to take a minute and just show you around our rig. We've been traveling together for 4 years on different configurations, different countries, all over the world, having an absolute blast. But I think it'd be interesting for you to see how we do that. So let's take a look.
What is it like living in the cramped condition?
Yeah, so that's a question we get asked a lot. You know, how can you, 5 of you, live in such a small vehicle? Well, the reality is it's not like we're in the vehicle all the time. The vehicle gets us to amazing places. We do have all the extra rooms that give us space, but something we like to say, and it's really true. Tiny house. We live in a tiny house, but we have a huge backyard. Sometimes our backyard is the Pacific Ocean. Sometimes it's just a mountain vista in Alaska. Sometimes our backyard is the Grand Canyon. So you have to be willing and able to give up something to get something. If you want that big backyard, sometimes you have to give up a little bit of space in the house, and that's what our experience has been. The Jeep allows us to just get to the most amazing places that we wouldn't otherwise be able to get to, and have incredible times together as a family, sitting around a campfire, enjoying nature, enjoying a great hike, climbing a mountain. The kids have learned to surf on the road. Without this configuration, it wouldn't have got us out to the beaches and the places we need to be. So it's been fun, and if you're thinking about getting into the overlanding lifestyle, highly encourage you to do so. You'll never regret it. All right, so this is a Jeep Wrangler 2012 Arctic Edition. And I can show you some of the basic modifications we've done. You know, it's not a rock crawler. This thing was designed more to just for the long haul, just to be comfortable, to drive long distances, but also to get off-road. So if we do have to crawl over some rocks, we're good to go. But it's really more designed for long distance overland travel. So the first most obvious thing we see here is an AEV bumper. This just gives us a real strong steel bumper on the front, very solid. So if we hit someone, no, I'm kidding. It's not going to damage our vehicle, it's going to damage theirs. No, that's not the intention, but it is a very solid bumper. But what it really does is gives us a space for our worn winch, which is inside here. And we've been able to use that quite a bit, mostly for rescuing other people. Like a van guy who drove onto a beach in New Zealand, probably shouldn't have been out there, but he got stuck badly. This pulled him out and saved the day before the ocean tide came in and washed him out to sea. So that's the bumper, and then underneath you can see some work they've done on the steering, stabilizing bars, and all that kind of stuff. I'm not a gearhead, I'm not an expert, but I can show you what we've got because it's really designed to haul all the weight that we have. In terms of suspension, the stock suspension wouldn't have done it for us, so we upgraded to an AEV 4.5 dual sport, I think it's called, and it gave us 4.5 inches of lift, allowed for bigger tires, but also allowed for that suspension that takes care of all the weight we have. In fact, we upgraded again this year, just in the winter, because the kids are getting bigger all the time, so you got more weight there. We've got the tent on top, we've got a lot of things in the back of the Jeep, and so AEV has come out with these high capacity coil springs, and that made all the world of difference, and I can show you how they look over here. That suspension allows for all the weight we have. Now you can see we've got a front runner full-size rack. It goes right across the whole vehicle, and that allows us to have a rooftop tent on the back, but also to store a lot of stuff on the front. We've got some of these alu boxes. They're waterproof, watertight boxes, and then on that side we typically have these what they're called monsoon bags, which are completely watertight, and we store clothing and all kinds of things that we just don't have room for inside. So the rack has been just an incredible piece of equipment that we couldn't live without, and it's made by a company called Front Runner. We have these little steps on here which just have come in so handy. Someone from, what do they call, Cargo Master Safari introduced us to them before we went to New Zealand, and man, we're glad we put them on. We put them on ourselves. You just unbolt the actual hinge nuts and then just put it right in its place. And we're going up and down all day on these things. I mean, to get stuff off the rack, I'm 6'4", but I still can't reach everything. So this just allows us full access to the top, and then all our gear's up here. So if you can get your hands on those things, I highly recommend them. And they just fold away like that. Yeah.
Pete, how do you sleep 5 people out of a Jeep? How does this work?
So when we started 4 years ago, the kids were a lot smaller, so we're in a different situation now. But when we were in New Zealand, we all slept using the Jeep alone. So the kids slept in this side tent. This is an ARB awning, and it extends out here. Now we use it for a sun shelter if we're on the beach in the hot sun, or for a rain shelter, but it also has a full tent. So we would have 3 cots, sleeping bags. So the kids are sleeping out here, and then my wife and I are sleeping in the rooftop tent, the penthouse suite up there, and in total comfort, all by ourselves. We now have a CVT on here. We've had a Tepui when we were overseas. We completely put them through the test, and we used them and pretty much wore out our other one. It was a great tent. Both brands are in great quality. We've put them through all kinds of weather, cold, hot, storms, gale force winds, and they've stood the test. So that's how we typically have a lot of sleeping space. Last year, if you watched some of our videos, we were down in Baja and then all through the desert, and we were towing our adventure trailer. It's a CVT trailer, which we use for storage, but it also has a high rack and another tent, a 4-person tent. So then it's Carol and I sleeping in here, and the kids are in the 4-person tent with plenty of space. So that's the sleeping conditions are great. We've now outgrown pretty much the driving area, because it's a 5-seater, but not necessarily 5 6-foot tall people, which is what we're dealing with now. So we're looking at adding a second vehicle, but up until now that has been great. The kids are in the back, and we take turns driving. So we did something pretty unique with our tent. Often you're going to see them mounted where they open up off the side, and that seems to be typical. I don't think I've seen another one which is done like this, but we opted to have it open over the back. What that did for us is give us a shelter while we're in the kitchen. This is kind of the cooking area, the kitchen area, and having this extra shelter has just been great in all kinds of weather. We even have an annex that zips onto the tent, which it goes right around this whole area. So we've been in some pretty inclement weather, rain, wind, and all that, and we're all comfortable in here cooking up a meal. So that I would highly recommend, if you like this configuration, opening off the back. Ask your designer or do it yourself. It's a great way to go. So then it gets access to the back of the Jeep, which is our kitchen area. Right now it's kind of in show mode. There's just stuff that we've been pulling out and putting back in all week, but we've got a recovery bag which has everything we need for safe recovery if you get stuck. Compressor so we can deflate our tires for rough roads or rock getting off the trail. That's actually the annex for the side, the tent for the side. We've got a solar panel here. This is made by Overland Solar. This is the old version, and it takes up a lot of space. This weekend we picked up the new one, which just rolls into a bag about that big, so that's going to free up a lot of space. Really, when you're setting up your rig, it's all about weight and space, because both are limited. So let me see what else we have here. We have a mini Skottle from a great company called Tembo Tusk, which this concept came from South Africa. It's a great way to cook all kinds of food with that. It's very small, doesn't take up a lot of space. This is a solar oven by a company called SunGo, or GoSun, GoSun I think it is, and it's allowed us to just cook all kinds of meals just harnessing the energy from the sun. So that's wonderful. In here, just of course, we're going to have all kinds of utensils and coffee making stuff and whatever. Here's our ARB fridge, which keeps our food cold. That's very important. You know, some people go with a cooler, and that's great if you're just going out on weekends, but if you're going long hauls, far away from shopping centers, you have to be able to keep your food good for the entire trip. So a fridge is a must. And it's powered off of a spare battery that's been inserted under the hood, and I can show you that. So we have a dual battery system which charges up by solar as well. So that keeps that running. Underneath here, tucked away nicely on a slide, is a little 2-burner stove, and it just clips out. And then we just run a propane line to the little propane tank right here, and you can cook up your food. Makes for a really nice kitchen. And when you're done, you just slide it away.
Is it hard storing enough food for 5 mouths to feed?
It is. The fridge now we've outgrown that as well. So lately we've been taking 2 coolers along as well. Man, yeah, that's always a struggle. And the kids, you know, when we left, they didn't eat nearly as much as they eat now. So they eat like me now. But prepping food, you know, food is such an important part of overlanding and travel. You need to have good food, and you need to be comfortable, because otherwise you're miserable, and nobody wants to be miserable. This is just a quick prep area. with a nice cutting board slide out. Very handy, doesn't take up any space. When you're finished, you wipe it off, you clean it, disinfect it, close it, and off you go. You'll see here is made by American Expedition Vehicles as well. It's a 10.2 US gallon fuel caddy. So you're not necessarily carrying jerry cans. It's all tucked away right behind the spare tire. And that's very handy. You can just run a little hose to siphon feed to your vehicle if you run out of fuel, and that'll get you hopefully to the next gas station if you haven't been paying attention to your fuel gauge. But going long distances in countries and places where there's not a fuel station on every corner, this is a must. And a shovel tucks in behind. That's to help you get unstuck, but it's also a handy tool to have. It's used almost every day. You can figure out why. In terms of solar, I showed you the panel back there. We just have a port where we just insert the plug, and then we can run the cord 20 or 30 feet to the sun and make sure it's optimally placed to get the most power. So it's dirty because it's being used a lot. It's never sitting in the showroom. It's always on the road. But there's a kit you can get that moves some of the equipment around. There's usually not a lot of space under these hoods, but there's just enough to tuck in a spare battery, and that allows for basically one runs all the accessories like the fridge and things like that, and that's where the solar panel is charging, and then one is for starting the vehicle. And then you'll see an S-Pod controller and a bunch of electronics over there. That allows for some USB plug-ins throughout the vehicle and out the back. That's pretty important too. We're always using our phones for pictures and video and communication with the outside world, and a few extra places to charge doesn't hurt. One last thing is they installed a switch here where I can just turn that off and it'll shut off everything that's on the auxiliary. So for shipping and it's in a container ship for 30 days or something, you get there, turn it back on, and the battery's good to go. You can follow us on YouTube at The Epic Family Road Trip. Just search that and you'll find us. On Instagram at Epic Family Road Trip. Pretty much everything. Epic Family Road Trip, and we'll be there. So we look forward to seeing you online. Make sure you stop by and say hi online and we'll get back to you. It's always nice to have feedback. And yeah, in the meantime, we'll see you down the road.